Starting. Hello, Hockey World. It's Monday, April 24th, 2017.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen, USA Today Sports.
I'm impressed we got that order right. And I'm Eklund. You're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to you every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings and to prove to you that we're all experts in the sport of hockey. Yes, the sport of hockey is professionally played in North America. We are on it.
Let me start out with the mea culpas. First of all, let me apologize to you for ever giving you grief about forgetting the date, because I have to do voiceovers now for all of our playoff things. And I've done some in one take, but I've had others where all I got to do is read what I wrote, and I can't seem to do it in one take.
Before you go further, I have to say to you that I figured out about a month ago, after doing the show for over a year, after doing probably over 2 years, right?
2 years.
Like probably close to 1,000 shows, I figured out that the date is right there on the podcast, right in front of me. Like literally underneath my picture it says the Hockey Buzzcast, April 24th, 2017.
Wow. Well, then I don't feel so bad anymore. So
I'm just like,
all right. I'm anxious to hear how you guys did in your predictions, because I just came off one of the worst. It might be the worst first round I've ever had in my predictions, and I'll sort of talk you through my logic on it.
Let's go. Let's start with yours, because we know ours. Let's hear yours.
Well, I went 4-4, and I'm highly embarrassed by that. And usually, I find and try to pick. There's going to be one incredible upset, so you always try to pick it. So yeah. I went out on a limb, and the upset that I took was Calgary over Anaheim, which wasn't even remotely close to being.
Me too. That one. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I took that and I lost, and then I didn't have a sniff of the Blackhawks Predators. I had the Hawks winning that real easily. I didn't have the Senators as well. I thought Boston would survive even with their depleted defense. So all I basically got right was Washington, and that was iffy. And Pittsburgh I got that, and the Rangers, which. I think most of us were pretty confident of that one.
Not me.
No, I picked against it.
Oh, did you? Oh, and then I got one more right, but I can't think of what it is. So I got the Penguins, Capitals, Rangers. Oh, and the Oilers. I had the Oilers, but everything else I got wrong. I just couldn't believe that the Blues record in the second half of the season, I wanted to discount that, because I had just done a story with Scotty Bowman, who said that through the years he's had great teams that were playing terrible down the stretch and ended up winning, and he's had teams that were playing great who got knocked out in the first round. I listened to Scotty Bowman. He actually he basically didn't tell me to go that opposite way. What he told me was you can't really base what you think is going to happen based on how a team's playing late in the season. So, Kevin,
I can top you. Okay, I had my worst round ever, and I missed an entire conference. Okay, the entire Western Conference I got wrong. Okay, so just throw that out there. Just all 4 of them. Okay, and I got 3 of 4 right in the East, so I actually got 3 of 8. And I picked Ottawa to win as my upset, sort of. So that was like that was crazy. And yeah, 3 of 8, and that's my worst ever as well. I'm pretty darn sure, although someone out there I'm sure will instantly tell me when I did worse than that on Twitter in a second. But I was usually pretty good about that, and I've been giving Ottawa credit all year. The only people in Ottawa love me this year for some reason. I picked Ottawa to make the playoffs. I picked Ottawa to win the first round. I'm right on with Ottawa. And even though both times I've said, I don't think I should be doing this. Because I went back and looked at my Ottawa predictions at the beginning. I'm like, I know that this is wrong, but I'm going to just say Ottawa's making the playoffs. And I said before this series, I even went through an explanation on the air about how Boston would win it, and then went back and had to say, whoops, sorry, I forgot. I wrote that Ottawa was going to win this in 7 games.
Well, I mean, the West screwed me, the same as you. I did get Anaheim right, because I think Anaheim now. Honestly, I think Anaheim now, with Chicago and Minnesota losing, have a really good chance to get to the final. But yeah, they were the only one I got right, and San Jose really disappointed me. And I think most everybody lost Chicago, Minnesota. In the East, I got Washington right, and I got the Rangers right. But my upset special was Columbus. So
you're two. You got two right.
Kevin, don't feel bad about Calgary because I had Columbus and they got swept.
So you got two.
Or
right?
no, it was for five. It was five.
I actually think that's worse, though. I think Calgary is worse.
Yeah, why Calgary as well?
I only had three right. I had Anaheim right, the Capitals right.
Did Kevin win?
Yeah, Kevin won.
This is the worst ever, and you won, Kevin. You won.
And Pittsburgh right. The only thing that I'll flip on is I did flip on the Rangers series when someone asked me before the last game what I thought would happen. I said, yeah, I think the Rangers are winning, but it doesn't count. So
I have one question to all of you watching out there. Why the hell are you watching this show? Like, it basically, you have no idea.
Well, that's going to do wonders for our viewership.
Well, I mean, to be honest, like what I always tell folks when they ask me about predictions, and I point out this quote that I saved. The quote's about 25 years old, so I'm sure it's much more money. But at the time, the guy was the head of the Las Vegas Gaming Commission, who said that his gambling institute made $3.1 billion every year off people who truly believe they can accurately forecast who's going to win a sporting event. And I mean, the difference between a sports writer and a regular fan is the sports writer knows that we don't know what's going to go on. We're so close to it. We know that there's a randomness to it that, especially in the NHL, that's just hard to explain. There's no explanation for some of the things that happen, especially now in the salary cap era where parity, just eats you alive in the forecasting business.
I mean, we just watched Toronto and Washington play to a dead heat in that series.
Yeah.
I mean, really. I mean, it's crazy. This is the best team in the NHL and arguably the worst to make the playoffs. Play 5 overtime games.
Well, that's the thing too. Like, how can you forecast a first round that has almost 42% of the games going to overtime,
right?
Which is, we all agree, is a flip of the coin.
It was the most exciting first round I think we've seen. I mean, the only thing about it that wasn't exciting is we saw no game 7s, which is insane. Like we usually see a game 7. So with all those overtimes, no game 7s. Like every game ended in. So that makes those overtimes even crazier, right? They set a record of 18 overtimes. I guess it was.
Right. But what you did see, and not just in the Toronto-Washington series, but in a few series, is teams being able in the playoffs to come back from 2 goals or more and make a game of it. I mean, that in the last few years that was virtually impossible.
Because the last couple of years, but this year more so than ever. But I think the last couple of years I felt like that. Now here's something we all talk about. There's random now, and it's all random. All right, you know what beat us all? The 2 methods that I used that weren't random at all. Okay, so here we go. The first method was matchups, which I use every year, and I go through and I take the 10 last games between each of these teams, and I say who's won more of those games. And if you did that on this, you would have gotten 6 of 8 right. You only would have missed Montreal and Chicago. They're the only 2 teams you would have missed in that. And then the other thing I tried out for the first time ever this year was the special teams goalie factor. So what I did is I took the team I took the goalie rankings, the power play rankings, and the penalty killing rankings. Those 3 rankings based on the NHL, and came up if they were 4th in power play, 3rd in goalie, 5th in penalty kill or whatever, they would average out to a 4. I took that number, the lowest number wins, and that also came out to 6 of 8. And that got the entire Western Conference right. It got including the Predators over the Hawks. So that's
one thing I would like to point out is the Predators went and looked at the pre-series predictions, and there were 69 members of the media who picked that series, and 65 of them took the Hawks, but my boss, Jim Haskip, was one of the 4 who took the Predators.
Wow.
And he was just adamant about it. Like he just felt like the Predators were playing better than the Blackhawks, and he was pretty consistent on that. So here's the amazing thing though about these playoffs, and I don't remember. Well, maybe the one year when the Columbus Blue Jackets were so impressive against the Penguins, but I mean, the big story was the team that lost. Like to me, the Maple Leafs are the story of the first round, and the reason they're the story is because we all know now that we knew they were ahead of schedule in terms of the rebuilding. But can you easily project with the right moves now that this team could be a factor next year in the?
Well, But here's the thing. We saw this with the Flyers too, Kev. If they took a step back next year because they did some juggling with the lineup and brought up a few more kids, it wouldn't shock me. And that is possible. I'm not ready to say that they're going to go beyond what they did this year yet when they have a developing team, because we saw the same thing with the Flyers and they didn't make the playoffs this year. And that isn't possible. And that is possible to happen to the Leafs too.
Yeah, but here's the difference with the Flyers and even with the Blue Jackets. Remember the Blue Jackets put on a show against the Penguins too when they lost to them a couple of years ago, and that is the presence that the players that are leading the attack for the Maple Leafs are huge difference makers. You know, like it isn't just a case of the team playing well. These are future stars and they're arriving. That's why I think the difference is with the Maple Leafs is. But
they have so many youngsters, Kev. Somebody's going to have a sophomore slump, if not 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah, we'll see. But I still think they're the big story of the.
They are. No, they are.
I think they're the big story, but I mean, I'm going to the locker clean out tomorrow, and I'll probably get a chance to ask a couple questions to Lou Lamoriello. And obviously, you know, this summer is going to be very important for the Leafs. You look at right now, they've got 3 guys in Bozak, Van Riemsdyk, both had pretty good years, and Leo Komarov, who are entering the final years of their contracts. And it's very possible that, you know, Van Riemsdyk has expressed his interest in staying in Toronto, but if he doesn't give a hometown discount or sweetheart deal like Kadri and Riley did last year, then I think he's probably on the block. And William Nylander started to take faceoffs during the playoffs, and Babcock has talked about moving him to center. That could if that could happen as soon as next year if they want to trade Bozak. So they realize from the reason that they lost to Washington is that their defense is pretty pathetic. They have 2 or 3 really good players, and then they have 2 or 3 others who are borderline NHLers. And if they're going to contend in the next 2 or 3 years, that's where Lamoriello is going to have to either make trades to improve their defense or go into free agency and improve their defense. But that's the focus of what's going to happen with Toronto.
Yeah, and I think that factors into it. They can't continue on unless they make some moves in this off season, but. I just think it was so impressive. Like you can tell because when you talk to it's not just the fans and the media. Like when I talk to GMs around the league for doing other stories, one of the first things they do is bring up is the fact that Toronto looks so good in that series.
Yeah, the coaching's a big factor. I mean, that's
exciting too. I mean, they were exciting to watch.
That's a huge factor. Babcock was great.
Oh yeah. Babcock was amazing. They were exciting to watch. Like everybody, it was not hard to get. I always use my wife and kids as like a test market for the world. They know about hockey, but they're hockeyed out for the most part, so they don't really want to watch hockey too much. But I had no problem telling if I said, "Hey, the Maple Leafs Capitals are on," everybody was like right there. Everybody was right around the TV.
Well,
they like the sport and they like exciting sports, but they like exciting hockey. But like if I put them in front of I'd say, like, honestly, they watched one of the Rangers, one of the Senators Bruins games, and I'm like, that series was sort of weird. It was a really weird series. To me, that was one of the odder series. It reminds me, like I said, so much of that Calgary-Vancouver series 2 years ago. You had 2 teams that both would have probably not been favored to beat anybody else, but they end up playing each other. So someone has to go to the second round.
I try not to take Don Cherry to task because I'm me and Don Cherry is Don Cherry. But in the analysis of the Montreal Rangers series, he said that the Montreal Canadiens were too small to beat the Rangers. That was not the problem. The problem was that Montreal could not score, like I've been saying for 2 years, and they are too wholly dependent on Carey Price, who, if he doesn't play like Terry Sawchuk, they're not going to win. And what happened? That's what happened.
Well, actually, it was twofold. They also got very little push from the blue line. Shea Weber aside, Markov wasn't scoring. None of the defensemen were scoring. And that's a team, because they're offensively challenged, need defensemen to score, and nobody was. And so the Rangers knew that, and after a while, the walls did close in because of that.
So I want to do something a little different, guys, because we only have Kevin for another 20 minutes or so, and I won't, because this last time what happened before you're traveling to Washington, right, Kev?
I'm leaving actually tomorrow morning, but yeah, I'm going to Washington. I'll be on that series. I think at least through 5, and then we'll see what happens after that. But
that's definitely the series to be on. That's a great. It's going to be that's the classic rematch of those two teams. And what I hate about this system is the fact that those two teams are always going to play each other before the conference finals. It's like you're hardly ever going to see Pittsburgh and Washington play each other before the conference finals. But anyway,
it's always time though to remind everyone why we have this system too. This was all based on the surveying that was done in the during the lost season when they surveyed all the fans. It's the most comprehensive survey they've ever done of fans, and fans wanted to see divisional play. And then as soon as we got it, everybody complained about it.
Well, here there is one thing though, Kev, and I started to get texts about this yesterday. Of course, the Rangers have more points than the Senators, and there was a lot of confusion about the Senators having home ice, and that's fair because in some other leagues, like I think it's the NFL, back in the day, they used to do a reseeding process. The NHL is not doing that.
They've never done that. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think it's okay that they don't, because it puts more on the regular season still in some ways. But and I think that's what they're trying to do with everything. I mean, that's why they don't have 3 points for a regulation win. They're trying to put more on the – it's just there's a lot of regular season. They make a lot of kind of efforts to keep the regular season from getting –
No, and I appreciate that. I do.
But I think that, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to matter, and I don't think the Rangers even want to play at home, right? I mean, honestly, they'd rather –
Well, don't tell James Dolan that, but I get what you're saying.
No, I know, of course. And Ottawa, but I want to move on to the next series with Kevin while we're here, and we'll get more into analysis of everything else. But and my first question is this one, because it's the two. I know you and I both have a really a fondness for Nashville and everything Nashville. And does Nashville? What kind of respect does Nashville get now and moving into this? I mean,
I think they do, because they knocked off one of the giants. Like it wasn't, and I get that the Blackhawks, and I've even written this too, did not look like the Blackhawks in that. But a lot of that was the way the Predators were playing. Like their defense is probably the best defense they've ever had, and that's pretty amazing to say when you consider they traded away Shea Weber and Ryan Suter's not there anymore. But this defense they have now, they're top 4 with Yossi and Subban, and Ryan Ellis has turned out to be much better than people thought he was going to be. I mean, I think everyone knew that he had an offensive knack, but he's very, very sound defensively, and he's become a really fine all-around defenseman. And I think Shea Weber moving on has sort of helped him emerge, and their third pairing with Weber and Matt Irwin has, that's probably the best third pairing they've ever had. So their defense has really been solid. But the other thing that was that came out of that first series was the emergence of Ryan Johansson, who really was the number 1 center that they hoped they had gotten. Now that line with Forsberg and Arvidsson, 15 points plus 23 in 4 games, that's really remarkable. And I think when you factor all that in, and then also, and folks in Philadelphia will probably gag when I say this, but Laviolette is a good playoff coach. He knows how to pull all the levers in the postseason, and he put on a show. I felt like in that series, like he did everything that he needed to do to combat the experience that the Blackhawks had. So. I think they're getting a lot of respect, and I think that series with St. Louis is going to be a great series simply because, the Blues have only lost about 3 games in the last 2 months or so. They've really been impressive. So
they should have gotten rid of Shattenkirk at the beginning of the season the way they're playing, Kevin.
Well, I don't, that's sort of part of it, and also Mike Yeo. How do you think the Minnesota Wild felt? Maybe it wasn't the coach.
Right.
Because he obviously has done a good job with them. And the big difference in in St. Louis post Hitchcock has been the play of Allen. And Jake Allen under Yeo has been like a .942 save percentage, where he was, I think, .897 under Hitchcock. Yeah. Well, why is that? Well, it's maybe a confidence thing. They sense that maybe Allen sensed that Hitchcock didn't appreciate the way he played in net, and obviously Yeo has sort of empowered him. So that'll be a great series. But in answer to your question, I do think the league, respects what's done. And maybe we shouldn't have been shocked by it because, and I didn't know this, but they were the number 4 team in the league after January 1 in terms of points, the Predators I'm speaking about. So they've been playing at this level for a while now.
I would say this about Nashville. The Ryan Ellis factor, this is a guy who was scoring 25 goals a year in juniors. I think what happened with Ryan Ellis was Shea Weber was in the way with a lot of other guys, and he finally got an offensive coach. I think that combination let Ryan Ellis's talent fully come out. He's always been a decent defender. He became a better defender. Kevin's right with that. But I think the other things were there, and they just weren't sort of being utilized. The Laviolette factor was always great. Again, I think there's a reason Peter Laviolette, when he comes to Philly, doesn't really want to talk to anybody because he just felt like it didn't go well at the end. But he had a good run, and I don't think Flyers fans would ever say that he was probably bad in the playoffs. We all know he's a good coach. I look at this team, and they did slay a dragon. Or, was it the Blackhawks? No, it was definitely a weakened version, but they were really good. And I look at them and kids like Fiala, the fact that they've been able to work that in and get that extra scoring, no, they look good against St. Louis. I think the one thing I'm really pushing for is get Roy Clark to do the anthem. That'll be a surprise. He's 83. He could do a banjo anthem. It would be great.
Is Buck Owens still alive?
I don't know. I
thought it was cool that Carrie Underwood sang that. So I thought
the thing with Ellis is, the league has gone the direction of defensemen like Ryan Ellis. He's speedy, he's offensively creative, and he's an adequate defender. So I think that's benefited him. The thing about Nashville that gave me a bit of pause, and I didn't think they were going to beat Chicago, was Rene. And the fact that Rene's, I think his save percentage during the regular season was like .906. He played great in the playoffs, but I'm wondering if it's a small window and he comes back down to the way he played in the regular season against St. Louis, or if they get by them in the conference final. If Rene's got one run in him, and so far it looks like he does, this is the year to do it. But I was concerned about his play seemed to taper off this year.
Let me add one thing on top of that though, because think of watching that St. Louis, Minnesota series and how many times you thought Jake Allen looked spectacular. Yeah. And then think in that Nashville, Chicago series and think about how often you saw Rene look spectacular. He didn't really look spectacular. He just was part of a great defensive show. I'm not saying he didn't play well because he did. I'm just saying he wasn't required to make those extraordinary saves. So it'll be interesting to see his save percentage and goals against average. How can you find any fault with a guy who gives up 3 goals in 4 games? But it'll be interesting to see if the Blues can put more pressure on him, because I guarantee you that's one of the things they're talking about in St. Louis is we got to get some pressure on Rene. We got to test him. We got to see if he's
Nashville. The good thing that Nashville did in that series was that they never were chasing the game, and that they were never in a situation where Chicago jumped out. There was the one lead Chicago got in the one game, and there was that they did have to come from behind in Game 3. Right. For the most part, it was only a 2-goal lead at that point, I think, right? So they never really were in a situation where Chicago can kill you if you're trying to bring it all back at once. If you pour it all out, and they never did that. I agree with you, Rennie. The one issue I have with the Predators in this series is I thought Crawford was really bad, really not good in the Chicago series, especially just with his time. He made some good saves, but the timing of the goals he let up were not good, and the momentum that created was not good. So the Predators still aren't like a sharp shooting team necessarily, to me. And this is I'm into this thing lately about sharp shooting teams in the playoffs versus really good goaltenders. Now Jake Allen is a good goaltender, but it also has a tendency to, go up and down. And there are even moments in the Minnesota series, even though they won the series as easily as they did, where you could see that the Wild was getting to him a little bit, where he would make some. And the key, I think, in this series will be shooting from the outside. You can't beat Jake Allen in tight, and that's where the Wild were losing it. That's where the Wild kept trying to push Jake Allen in tight. When they shot from the outside, keep bringing up Martin Hansel's goal, that's the way you beat Jake Allen. Taking shots from outside. The Predators' defense likes to shoot the puck, and that'll be key. They'll have to get that from their defense.
So I got a big question for Kevin, because this is one that I don't know if any of us could answer, but everybody wants to know. So Bruce Cassidy, he's still with the Bruins. The season ends. He says he wants to be the coach. they haven't given any kind of indication whether he will be the coach or not.
I know, and it's really baffling because I think Cassidy was Sweeney's guy all along.
Yeah.
So I
Maybe
don't
Sweeney will
understand
be
what's going on there. I mean, the only read you could have on this is that there's some hesitation from the top,
Right.
So that they have to, kind of go through the proper channels. Otherwise, he would have been named by now. I agree with that. It's really a strange situation because you certainly couldn't help but think that Cassidy did a really fine job with that team. When they're as beat up as they were. I mean, honestly, McAvoy goes from playing at Boston University, and 3 weeks later he's playing 25 minutes a game for the Boston Bruins in a big playoff series. Like, I mean, it's a testimony to him, but also to the fact of what Cassidy was had to deal with, and still made that team competitive.
Well, what I'm interested in, Kevin, is, I mean, especially the three teams that lost this weekend in Montreal, Chicago, San Jose, all teams that, I mean, especially Chicago and San Jose, their rosters are loaded. They've been in the Cup final or in the Stanley, or won the Stanley Cup in the last couple of years, and they've had failure in the last at least this playoff. Stan Bowman came out and didn't seem too pleased after getting swept, and I'm wondering whether a sort of a reset, an organizational reset, is in the offing for both of them, because they do have players with San Jose. Thornton and Marlowe are free agents. Vlasic is 1 year away from being a UFA. In Chicago, they've got the Hossa contract. They've got Yarmulson up in a couple years. I mean, there's not a lot of flexibility. Are they going to do things that we don't expect?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Mike. I would say that the Blackhawks situation is really challenging for Stan Bowman, who's done really a remarkable job to keep that team competitive.
Yeah.
For as long as he has. I mean, 3 Cups since 2010. 60 some playoff wins. Like, they've done a lot, and but it's reached the point now. 3 things happen when you have that level of success. First of all, your players get older on you. They cost you more money, which puts you in salary cap hell. And then you don't draft very high, so you don't replenish. And then there's a issue that's associated with that as well, is then you start to spend your second and third round picks to keep that team in the mix. And all of that is happening to the Blackhawks. And I wrote this column, and some fans said, well, what did you expect them to do? Well, I'm not complaining that they did that. I'm just pointing out that that's what happens.
Yeah.
We have success.
They've done it better than most teams have done it.
Yeah, and I think that they're in that situation now. Like, their 4 defensemen that they were battling with in that series are all over 30. Like, Seabrook's over 30. I think he's 31. Duncan Keith's 33. Campbell's way up there. Johnny Oduya, they were trying to make hay out of him. Right. Those are 4 guys over 30. Hjalmarsson, I think, is about to turn 30.
He's right. Yeah.
So, you're dealing with an aging team, and those guys are very expensive. I did the calculations for the column in 2010, which when they won that cup, Kane was still on his entry level. And those 5 key players, speaking of Kane, Taves, Hossa, Hjalmarsson, Keith, and Seabrook, yeah. They took up only 16% of the salary cap. Now they're over 50. And if you took the top 7 guys, if you add in Crawford, those top 7 guys on the Blackhawks now take up 66.7% of the cap space. So, they're dealing with a lot of issues there that will not be easily corrected. And it looked like they were regaining some of their depth because their younger guys were having, or not necessarily their younger guys, but their depth guys were rising up. Panic had an unexpected good season.
Right.
Schmaltz looked like he was going to be. Hartman was contributing,
Mm-hmm.
but none of those guys in the playoffs, could do the same. So they didn't seem to have that level of depth. So I think they are going to attempt to make changes, but I'm not sure they can do a whole lot at this point.
Well, they will get Maxim Shalunov next year, and that'll be a help. He really is a tremendously speedy guy, and that can only help him. You talked about the Sharks, Mike. They looked like an electric car that hadn't been charged in a couple of days. They had nothing.
Well, can I throw one thing in with Chicago real quick?
Yeah.
Before we go on to the Sharks. We talked about this earlier, Kevin, and you came. I think last time you were on here, you said you had talked about Crawford with the Hawks, and that Crawford was their guy. They were going to stay with Crawford. They were going to stay with Crawford. I know everything that anybody says in this world is only as good as the expiration date on a half gallon of milk. Like it's basically give it like 14 days or something like that. But I kept hearing a lot over the last couple of days that's their out. That they're it's obviously not going to be removing an assistant coach like they did today, but we're talking more into lines that Crawford's money is there, and it's got to be hard to move him because there's not that many places we talked about before. But Darling is somebody that they do trust, whether they trust him as a number one or not, or whether or not this is a team that has so much money spent on offense they've got to go to the old Red Wings system that they have to trust somebody enough to get them through. Like Darling, could they trust him enough? But yeah, do you still think that Crawford is in the same place?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, that first round loss, I mean, it was pretty clear that Stan Bowman, fully intends to do something. So will it be something? And that's one of the things he could do is try to move Crawford. Like, would Dallas be, now would they trade him within the division? There's so many questions there.
Well, they traded Patrick Sharp within the division, so
but there's a difference between aging Patrick Sharp and goalie.
True.
No, there is. The only ways you can. We've always said the way you can change a team is either the easiest way is to change your coach or change your goalie. Like changing your goalie does change your team around.
But the thing is that the top echelon guys on Chicago are basically immovable.
Right.
Well, I mean, Hossa might be movable. I don't know if he's immovable.
Well, I mean, he's got 4 more years, Russ.
He's 38 years old. That's a tough contract.
That's a tough one, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, but
I didn't know he had 4 years.
But the middle of the road guys, the Marcus Krugers and the Yarmulsons are making $3 or $4 million, and if they trade Crawford and get a cheaper goaltender, somebody making half as much, then there's room that they create room to make a move that can help them in the short term. Plus, I do think that the young guys on that team will gain a year of experience, and I keep thinking that Alex DeBrincat will maybe have a chance to make that team after scoring 50 goals in consecutive years in the OHL. But the thing with Shalunov, Russ, is he might not come over because
he's coming over. His contract is expiring. He's coming over.
Okay, well that's good.
He's 24. He can play center or the wing. He's a perfect guy to slot.
And that helps.
In Chicago, I mean, they don't need that really. In my opinion, they need defense. I think they really need defense. I think because of what Kevin's saying, they are getting older and they are getting slower, and there's situations where you see it. And Oduya is not the same Oduya that he was before. That was obvious, right? So.
But Campbell and Oduya are expiring contracts.
They're expiring contracts, but you need to fill those spots with something.
They could sign Carl Alsner like everybody else. I mean,
right? No,
the word on Carl Alsner is he wants $5.5 million.
Yeah, I think that's going to come down. I don't think he's getting that.
Well, it'd be interesting, but they'll be right in the same boat if they sign Carl Alsner.
Well, I'll tell you this: Washington really hasn't skipped a beat with Alsner out when it's suspected that he has a concussion. He's been out the last 4 games, and Nate Schmidt has played pretty good.
Schmidt has really stepped up. Yeah, I agree.
For them to be good, for the Hawks to move Crawford, they have to have you almost have to have a reason. What are you going to do with that money, and what are you going to do with that money? You got to you're bringing that money in. Or is it just going to be to maintain what you have?
How about sign TJ Oshie?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think that the Hawks have the advantage of the fact that they're a team where people want to go and play. They can probably get guys for a little bit less. I think that's going
to start to fade, though.
A little bit.
But I know what the TJ Oshie thing. I mean, I mean that would solve some problems. I mean, it really feels like they don't have enough wingers for.
Yeah.
And they don't have enough guys to play with Taves and Kane. That's an issue. But I don't disagree with you about defense. It's olding and aging.
Yeah.
And they got to do something.
Good against Nashville is not the greatest offense in the world. The Predators aren't not the Predators thing. So I'll let you go, Kevin. I know you got to go, but I really appreciate this, and we will definitely talk more about. I want to hear more about the other series. So maybe I'll talk to you off air and bring some of your thoughts back in on air at some point here. But
all right, sounds great.
Thanks,
guys.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.
With the San Jose situation, I mean, Marlowe's a UFA,
Yep.
Thornton's a UFA. I mean, from everything that we've heard over the last couple months, there's some interest in bringing them back, but I can't imagine that it's going to be anywhere close to the salary that either one of them is making. I keep saying, if you can sign both of those guys for the salary of one, if you can sign them for half of what they're making right now, then maybe the Sharks bring them back. But I think the series against Edmonton exposed San Jose to what happened last year in the Stanley Cup final. Edmonton was the faster team.
Yeah, no, they're. I mean, just on Marlowe and Thornton, having talked to people around and talking to people very close to them, including them at times over the last couple of years, I think that you have a shot at getting them for that, like you really do, because these are two players that are very unique to their situation. This is a really unique. They love it there. They've been there their whole careers. They want to end their careers there. They both want to end their careers there together.
Right.
Marlowe really doesn't want to move. Marlowe's wife, who controls a lot of what Marlowe wants and thinks, does not want to move. I mean, I know people that play on a youth hockey team with those guys, like that they're around them all the time, so they know they want to stay there. Thornton has found his place too, and Thornton hated the whole idea of moving from Boston to San Jose so much that he swore he would never move again. So we have, like, you're talking.
They're gonna have to sign as a package deal, otherwise they may not be able to swing it.
And I think you need to do it, actually, because honestly, even though the series did expose some things about the speed, it also exposed the fact that Thornton and Marlowe were still effective players. They had moments in that series where they still were very important players on that team.
Yeah, Thornton got pretty rocked in his hip.
He got hurt.
Shock me if he even had to get a surgery.
Yeah, no. Hurt as he did, and he looked good. And I mean that, I come back, that 2-on-1 goal, the two of them scored together. They still have it. They still have a lot of their game. So
now the thing, and I brought this up before, the thing that'll be interesting with the Sharks is Brent Burns' new contract kicks in this summer. Yeah. He goes up from around $5.5 to $8 million. Marc-Edouard Vlasic is in the last year of his deal, making $4.25, and he's a UFA. If they can't get him signed, if they talk to Vlasic's agent, and Vlasic wants $6 million, which they probably can't afford because they've got Paul Martin locked up long term, they've got other players that they have to sign. Then you could see, Vlasic could be like Yarmulson, could be like Noah Hannafin, who's a younger player, but it could be one of these defensemen this summer that San Jose puts out there to see what they can get because they can't get him signed on a long-term deal.
No, and I'm glad you brought that up because it's a rumor I've been chasing. It's actually Vlasic's going to be on my rumor chart because he is one of those guys that been told is available. He is very popular, obviously, a very good player, very solid player, and there is one huge fan of his,
Mike Babcock.
Exactly. And on a team that needs a player like Vlasic in the worst possible way,
yes.
But the thing is, we don't know how long Vlasic will stay at this level because those kinds of defensemen are not what's in vogue in this league, and there's very few of those guys that have been sticking around long term playing that hard, gritty style.
But I think Vlasic is not. I think you've got another 5 years in Vlasic.
I don't know. I mean, he played early. I don't know that.
He did, but at the same time, he's such a smart defenseman that there are some of those guys who don't necessarily have that speed and stuff like that, but have the intelligence and have the ability to teach other defensemen, which is one of Vlasic's strengths. He's a really good, on ice coach almost, Right. I've heard from so many players who play with him in San Jose that credit their careers to him,
Right.
And that is exactly, if I'm Toronto, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm bringing in each.
And that kind of move may be preferable to dipping into free agency because, I mean, look at it on a sort of scale here. You go out and you sign Carl Alsner or try to compete to sign Carl Alsner, who I think is a good defenseman, although the analytics crowd don't think so. He's probably going to demand, $5.5 million, somewhere in that area for 5-6 years at least. Okay. Yeah. If you trade now, you're obviously giving up assets, but if you're trading for Vlasic or you're trading for Yarmulson, if Chicago does the reset, Yarmulson's under contract for 2 years. Vlasic's under contract for a year. You obviously want to probably re-sign Vlasic if you're trading for him. But if you don't, I mean, essentially you've got a window here with him and with Yarmulson that fits into what the construct of the Leafs are right now. A guy that you're not locked up long term on. You have to lock up Alzner long term, that means locking him up until his mid-30s, and that's dangerous because that could be a bad contract then. A guy for 1 or 2 years is not a bad contract.
No, I think that I can really see that Vlasic Toronto thing coming to fruition more than Jarmelson. I think in Chicago they realize that Jarmelson is the youngest of that group, and they need to keep some continuity going on with that. I can see them keeping him around.
I could see Vlasic, but I honestly, if the report of Elliot Friedman is true regarding the Hurricanes entertaining the possibility of trading Noah Hannafin, remember Mike Babcock wanted to draft Hannafin over Mitch Marner, and that fits in terms of him being a young player that would grow with the current group. The problem is
Hannafin's not getting traded.
Well, I don't think so. I don't think.
If you give Mitch Marner, then maybe, yeah. But
it defies all logic, Russ. But I mean, I'm just saying. Well, the rumor being out there and the fact that Carolina's got so many defensemen that if they wanted to entertain it, they could. But they're going to expect Nylander. They're going to expect.
No, that's it. Nylander or Kapanen, Martin. Like you're looking at players like that they don't want to. Obviously, that's what they should get for him.
Right, but see the reason that it would not be out of the question is Toronto has young players like Bronco.
They could move Nylander, perhaps, but
I don't think they want to move Nylander, but I think they would move Kapanen in the right circumstance. They had to give up more than that for Hannafin. But I mean, they have so many good young wingers. They got Bronco in the pipeline. They have Carl Grunstrom in the pipeline. They have young players with the Marlies that are ready to jump up.
Kapanen pretty much from Carolina too, isn't he? I mean, like if you think about it, I mean,
yes.
He spent most of his. No, he's not American. Is he American born, Kapanen?
I don't think so.
I don't know. He may have been.
No, I don't think so. I think he was born in Finland. I think he was born in the summer. I'll check.
He probably grew up in his formidable years in Carolina, where Sammy Kapanen was really a legend.
Yeah, that's true. It would have been Carolina before. Yeah.
I mean, I know. Like I said, I knew where he lived around the corner from my in-laws in New Jersey.
He's still recovering, Ak. He's still recovering.
I know, and but he's gotten a lot better since then. So, but yeah, he was only 6 or 7 at that point, I think.
Here's the thing: the one thing you have to factor in now is, will Chicago try and sign Will Butcher? They might. I mean, a lot of teams will go after Will Butcher now. Excuse me, and use him, leverage their stars to get a defenseman that they feel that can play right away, and Will Butcher's that guy.
Kapanen, Casper Kapanen was born in July of '96, so he was born during the summer when Sammy probably went back to Finland.
All right, so there you go.
But no, and we know from last year how heavy Toronto was in, and I'm sure other teams like Buffalo are going to be in on Butcher if Butcher goes the way of VC. I mean,
he's going that way.
Right, and that's the thing. I mean, even though the chaotic situation right now with Buffalo, you've got Jack Eichel as a guy who would attract a young player to come there. There's a core there. In Toronto, the same thing with the playoffs that they just played. The exposure that they got is going to be like honey for bees in terms of people coming to Toronto. So right now, it's not the scary thing that it used to be. Now there might be some, and a guy like Butcher might see the opportunity to have a success in the NHL playing on a team like that.
Mike Babcock was selling that. He was selling that in a few timeshares after the game. But the thing is, there's still pressure there, though, and that does sometimes scare away certain players.
Yeah,
that's just the way.
Not now. This is like the time to do it, Russ. There's right now the pressure's not there, but next year.
But it will be.
All of this equals pressure next year.
Yes.
This team is already, like Kevin just says, aren't they a couple picks away from being a contender? That's like that kind of stuff it's real. It's coming, and you can't stop it. It's a steamroller coming at you, Mike. You can't stop it.
No. I mean, but the thing is, in the wake of that, I think that Leaf fans have to be. I'm a realist. Leaf fans have to be prepared. They had 2 minor injuries all year. Mitch Marner for a couple weeks, Morgan Riley for 10 days.
They had one major injury, Mike, and that was the last game of the season, losing their goalie. Because to me, when I watched last night, there's no way Toronto's not in the second round of the playoffs.
I said at that point, if they played Ottawa, if they played Boston, they were going to win.
Yeah, no, they were going. They would have gone through them, and then we would have seen an incredible, matchup in the next round. I mean, they would have been against the Rangers, and that would have been crazy. Can I also point out one thing right now that I thought yesterday's goal by Austin Matthews was one of the top 5 goals I've ever seen?
Yeah, me too.
I mean, that it just from the insane point of view that he is moving at incredibly high speeds, and he lacrossed the puck.
You just don't. I mean, that was a lacrosse goal. He flattened out the puck on a stick, and I couldn't believe how much he elevated that puck in a short.
And how at what?
But I will. You know what though? It's a lacrosse goal, but that does show his golf skill. If you think about it,
definitely golfing, because that I mean, it's funny. I was out driving the ball this morning at a driving range, and it just because it's something I do when
that's his other sport. It's golf, and that shows it.
Oh my gosh, that to do it at that speed, with players in that pressure, with players barreling down on you against a goalie like Holtby, that just takes huge cojones and just an unbelievable amount of skill that he can pull it off. And it made me wonder, where is this kid in line with McDavid? Like, suddenly you're starting to see, McDavid in the playoffs versus who's had a better playoff so far. I mean, obviously Matthews is done, but I would say Matthews has been better in the playoffs than McDavid.
I'd say he's either better or they're equal. But again, it's different because McDavid's always going to be that flashier, little bit faster player, where Matthews is going to be that guy who really gets more of his goals down low, and they play different roles on their teams too.
I mean, Matthews scored 4 goals in 6 playoff games as a 19-year-old. I mean,
4 in the first 2 playoff games,
right?
Yeah, but we gotta slow the roll for all of these kids, because again, with all of these kids that they have, at least 1 or 2 of them are going to have a sophomore slump.
Oh yeah, I did. No, but
it could be, but I just don't. I don't see it. Just, I mean, I'm willing to slow the roll for a lot of players.
We didn't see it for Dylan Larkin either, but it happened.
Right, and that's where there is a cautionary tale here. But also, like I said, this playoffs for Toronto was educational, not only on the part of the players, but on the part of the management. And if you saw where they broke down in the third period and in overtime, when you overworked Jake Gardiner and he starts giving away the puck like it's candy at Christmas, and when Martin Marincin is on the ice for the tying and the game-winning goal in overtime,
like that, especially the game-winning goal, like that, I just didn't understand. Now, I was racing around because there were different things happening. Did they have a chance on that icing to call a timeout, and they didn't?
I believe. Well, I don't know if they already used their timeout.
They did use it.
I don't know if they did or not.
I don't know if they did.
I don't think they did. But
that was one of these bad. Like when that icing happens, I'm thinking to myself, they're going to call the timeout here right away.
I talked to a couple Washington reporters after the game last night, and their observation was right on target. As soon as Matthews scored the goal to make it 1-0, there was a switch that just clicked. With the Capitals, they dominated the rest of that game unbelievably from 1-0 to the end. Toronto had no answer for them, and Babcock, because he played Jake Gardiner and Morgan Riley 28. They're averaging 28 minutes a night. They were spent in the third period.
I got one more statement to add about Toronto, and then I do have one more smaller subject. But the other thing about Toronto is we could talk about their defense. Their defense definitely needs to be upgraded. Whether they bring Brian Boyle back, who knows? I mean, I'm sure they'll give him an offer. Here's what they really need to do, though. If you want to ensure that Austin Matthews doesn't go into a sophomore slump, you need to get him somebody on that line. No offense to Zach Hyman, but you need to get him a veteran on that line that can still show him the way and make that line even better.
And that's why, and it's a long shot, Russ, but that's why as soon as Elliot Friedman broke the rumors about Ilya Kovalchuk, I started to say, there's your left winger, there's your big left winger to put on the line with Matthews and Nylander. If you're gonna keep Nylander on the wing, as long as
he can keep up with them. I don't know what Kovalchuk's skating is like now.
I think that's a mistake. I think that would be a mistake. I just do. I mean, I don't think that's the right player for that. And plus, there's the whole.
I think the idea is right.
I think I would go for Oshie, honestly.
No,
I think
Oshie would be
that
great.
they're not going to spend the kind of money that they would need to spend on Oshie when they're going to have to pay Matthews and Nylander and Marner in the next 2 years. If they're going to spend money, they're going to spend it on defense. The thing is with Kovalchuk, you could get him for 1 year, maybe two at $4.5, $5 million.
Trade with New Jersey though. Did you read all the rules that came out about this?
Yes,
Probably trade with New Jersey. Yeah.
Right, you'd have to trade with New Jersey, and I'm sure Lou Lamoriello has some connections there.
Yeah, I think they probably would, take a prospect, a low-level like a B or a C prospect, and that would solve it.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't like. I would almost. I mean, when I think of a guy like Kovalchuk, That's not the guy I want teaching Matthews how to.
How about bringing in Jaromir Jagr then?
No.
Now that sounds ridiculous. Okay?
I know. I'm just kidding.
No, serious. It does sound ridiculous, but that's the kind of player you want. Okay.
It is the kind of player, but maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah, but who else is like that now? That's out there.
How about this? I heard the name mentioned yesterday, and he is a UFA, and he is on Washington, but his name is not TJ Oshie. His name is Justin Williams.
Yeah, Justin Williams for 2 years could be the trick.
Yeah, that's a good. That's a good.
He can still skate.
Championship pedigree.
Yeah, and because you just need there's certain kinds of like Matthews right now. One thing that's interesting about his rise into fame, right, is that he came to a team with really no strong, dominant players on it. So if you bring in certain kinds of players, you could really upset that apple cart. You got to bring in the right kind of player who's a good player, but also like a humble type player who can really just completely realize that he's there to help Matthews along, and that's his job. And then
there is one other negative to the Leafs though that doesn't really get talked about, and I saw it in these playoffs. Matthews is the leader. He is the leader, and that's not good for all the other veterans that they have. Matthews became the leader of that team. He led them on the ice. He scored the big goals. Right. So, the other veterans that are there, like Van Riemsdyk,
it puts them in the position.
That really is a glass half full thing.
Well, but Russ's point is right. I mean,
no, it is. I get it. And I'm me. I'm a big fan. I thought they made. But and I'm not a big fan of making the best player captain and stuff like that. But some situations.
But what Russ is saying is that you see the presence of Matthews, and it automatically puts those veterans in the place of what they are, which is supplementary players, which is support players, and that's the reason why this summer the decision-making process regarding guys like Bozak and Van Riemsdyk with a year left in their contract. If they can't get them on sweetheart deals, if Lamoriello and Babcock want to bring them back, that's why they move them, because they've got young guys. They can go out in free agency and sign other guys. This is a roster in flux. They're not going to stay put because they're moving forward with the young guys as the leaders of that team.
But to me, it was a big factor. I just saw that, and it made me think that the veterans that they have probably didn't help as much as people think. But here's the other small thing. So in the under 18s over the weekend, the U.S. beat Finland, won a gold medal. Probably the most interesting story is the goalie, Dylan St. Cyr, 5'8" goalie. He is the son of Manon Rayon.
Really?
So a lot of times your mom, you would go to your mom, and if you try and talk sports, you couldn't really get much, or you went to your mom and you tried to talk to her about your job. You probably didn't get much. He's the one guy that could talk to his mom, and she could really help him with his job.
Snake out the glove hand like this.
He's 5'8".
5'8", though.
5'8".
That's awesome. That's crazy. When was the last goalie that was that size in the NHL?
Shrimp Warders.
Yeah, and he's committed to Notre Dame.
Darren Pang.
Remember Robbie Moore?
Darren Pang.
Yeah. Darren Pang, yeah, obviously Darren Pang. I remember Robbie Moore.
Pang's not even 5'8".
Yeah,
no, he's shorter.
He's 5'6" or 5'7". Robbie Moore was 5'5". I remember that. That was.
I think UC Saros is actually 5'7" or 5'8" for Nashville.
5'8".
Yeah. Is he? Yeah, I didn't realize that. Yeah, that's a great factor. I like that. I like that little tidbit, Russ. That's really cool.
Yeah, and actually, a kid named Doogie, Sean Doogie, who was I believe the top scorer for the U.S. 5'3".
Wow. Huh.
And he's draft eligible.
Average size white guys, as they said in Youngblood, right?
But the thing is, here's the thing. I mean, he was dynamite. I mean, I think somebody, if you have a 5th, 6th, or 7th, and you have an extra pick, you got to draft this kid and just see, because how do we know that someone 5'3" can't make it in the future? He was in the right place at the right time all the time. He was pretty tough, but he's 5'3".
Oh man, I got a text from somebody too. I want to end on this thought because we were a Chicago fan who said this, and we want to throw it out just as a thought. We can talk about this in the future more for sure because we'll have plenty of time to talk about this. But this is interesting. Is it who is to say that Patrick Kane isn't what they do? When Patrick Kane isn't the move that they made, like that is
He could be.
We all think about Patrick Kane. Okay, he's such a great player. Obviously, all that money, all that stuff. But all the stuff that happened before, all seemed like it was not Patrick Kane's fault or whatever. But we all remember where this was, and it not, he didn't do anything terrible. But he also isn't a choir boy. Obviously, has had his issues with other situations, right? Before, and he's very, very valuable. So if you're at Chicago, you can move him without any problem at all. And I don't care what his contract is. You can move Patrick Kane. That's
technically it's Taves' team. Messier got moved away from Gretzky. I mean,
right. So is that possible? I mean, it's possible. It's just an interesting thought. I mean,
it's possible if he's traded to a team that doesn't have, like, because the problem with the Hawks structurally in terms of salary cap is they've got two $10 million plus players on the roster, and they no team can really handle that. So if they trade him to a team that doesn't have a big money player, like the Buffalo Sabres, for example, that might
be the worst place to trade him. It would.
I know it'd be the worst, but I'll tell you right now, Russ, with the state of the franchise right now, Terry Pegula is going to be looking to make a big splash. I wouldn't doubt that if Kane was on the block, that they would entertain it.
I'll tell you where Kane should go, Montreal. I wonder if Montreal has the right kind of.
I was thinking Winnipeg. Winnipeg's loaded with young prospects.
Kane would have to agree to go to Winnipeg.
Yes.
How about Patrick Kane for Carey Price? Because the Montreal fan base is asking that Carey Price should be traded.
Yeah.
Who said that?
There's a lot of fans in the way.
That's just moronic.
I know it's moronic, but
that's not the majority of Canadians fans, though.
No, I mean, who would you bring in? That's the dumb part.
That's the internet fringe of negative.
No, but here's the thing. All right, this is where I have to have a little bit of a rant now. And if you call this complaining, so be it. If you're going to be on the internet screaming about a guy, about your team like Carey Price, and say he doesn't belong on the team, he should be traded or whatever, tell me who you're replacing him with.
Yeah.
Before you shoot your mouth off.
Yeah, I mean, okay? So let's just play this out. Is that if you're gonna trade him for anybody, Patrick Kane?
Sure, I think it's possible, but then who are you replacing him with?
Right, you got to replace him, obviously. But
give him Corey Crawford in the deal.
Yeah.
I mean, it could happen.
I mean, is that? Yeah, that's that.
I don't think that makes him better.
Well,
no, I don't think trading Carey Price you can ever say makes you better. I mean, that's the problem is you can't say trading the best.
You might score. Here's the problem. In the NHL that we're in, you might score one more goal a game, but you might give up 1.5 more goals a game, and that's the problem.
We'll finish on this. What I'm going to be very interested in is how Montreal gets better. They're going to probably try to re-sign Radulov. Pacioretty's in place. I mean, to me, Russ, Price is probably not going anywhere. Obviously.
Well, they have Noah Juleson. We'll see if he can stay healthy and if he's close.
Or Sergachev. Yeah, I mean,
Sergachev is closer.
They've got young guys on defense, but the problem is up front. Are they going to trade Galchenyuk instead of paying Galchenyuk because he's not a center? Because now 2 coaches in a row have said he can't play center for me.
I think they're going to make that mistake. Yes.
Here's my thinking on all this. Montreal Canadiens have to be smart this summer and not do too much and give Claude Julien a year from the beginning of the season to see what he can do. Because I think a lot of what you saw was Julien trying to put his team together as fast as he could. And a lot of these moves that they made at the deadline were about that, about making him a tougher team. Yeah. But I want to see Julien in an off season when he can make a couple trades, where he can make a couple moves with Bergevin there. I just want to see what they can do.
Like me personally, I saw enough out of Galchenyuk that I would have to keep him because when they played in the right way, he was a factor in a lot of games.
Yeah. But if that rumored Matt Duchene for Galchenyuk deal is out there for Bergevin, I think you have to do it. I really do.
I did before, but I'm not. I guess you do. It would be.
Both of them would be being traded at the low end of their value because Duchene had a bad last quarter of the season, and Galchenyuk, there's questions, but they're both young, and I don't think Montreal's willing to sign Galchenyuk to a long-term extension.
Here's the thing, though, and this is where I'll say I always felt like Galchenyuk probably got overrated a little bit based on where he was drafted. It's not his fault.
I mean, think about the difference between these. Galchenyuk is not necessarily he's an American player.
Duchene is a better player.
Yeah. Galchenyuk's an American who isn't going to be, on probably on American Olympic teams or anything. That Duchene's been on Canadian Olympic teams, as a Canadian, which is even harder as a forward to make the team. So it's like, to me, it's
not even close talent-wise right now.
Yeah.
Duchene is a lot better. Now, can Galchenyuk get closer? Absolutely. Yeah. But right now, today, it's not even close.
Yeah, you're right. Let's get to the lottery simulator. Tomorrow we'll get into all these other matchups and predictions and stuff like that. We have a lot of fun things ahead to see, because the matchups obviously know what they're doing better than we do.
Hopefully people aren't betting money on what we say.
Definitely don't.
If you did, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, seriously. Kevin, I think it's really – how embarrassing is it for Kevin to come on and say, I've had my worst job ever, winning 5, and he beat us all? Holy cow. All right. Here we go. The winner of the lottery simulator today would be Colorado. Finally, Colorado.
Well, they did the other day too.
The other day when I wasn't here, maybe.
No. They've won it once already.
They won it once.
Yeah. That feels like it was a month ago. Here we go. Next up, Buffalo, always second. Buffalo, always spot. Hey, seriously, it's crazy. And followed by Arizona.
There's 2 fan bases out there that always feel like they come in second in the draft. It's Buffalo and Philadelphia.
Yeah? Why so?
Well, I mean, Kane.
Buffalo always does.
Oh, that's true. I'll give you that. They're definitely the bridesmaids.
I mean, we still hear about that.
Oh yeah. Well, that was epic. The way that went down, for sure.
Here's what we don't know. Here's what we don't know. Would the Flyers have taken Kane? We think so, but we don't know.
It was at the draft, and yes. Even when they were even trying to move up to number 1. They were even trying with Chicago.
I'm pretty sure they would have too. But.
They wouldn't pay Patrick Kane that much. JVR was a good, solid second pick, but second overall pick. But anyway, this was second overall pick. Man, Bobby Ryan. Speaking of second overall picks, right? Bobby Ryan had a hell of a series.
He did. He's really on the rise, and
that is his NHL moment so far. This playoff series has been his.
Actually, I think the moment in that series was Clark MacArthur scoring the game-winning goal.
No, that was great.
Here's the problem, though, for Bobby Ryan. Later in the week, now I know the Rangers Ottawa doesn't come here until I want to say it's Wednesday, Thursday, but we're going to have some really hot days over this next week and weekend. If it's still hot the week after, Bobby Ryan hates that humidity. I may put that as a factor in my picking.
Doesn't MSG have air conditioning?
We won't be there.
No, he hates the East Coast humidity. He hates it.
We're not talking. They won't be in New York till Sunday, right? Sunday or Monday.
Sunday or Monday, something like that.
Their series starts Thursday, so I bet you it'll be Thursday, Saturday, and then they would probably Monday or
Tuesday, probably.
Tuesday.
All right, there you go. All right, folks. Great show as always. Thank you guys for joining in. If you can feel free to follow us here. You can follow everybody on Twitter at Mike and Buffalo or at Sportsology with Russ. I'm at Eklund. Tomorrow I'm debuting something for you guys as I had it made up. It's just arrived. I'm going to go through it.
First of all, we're going to start at 4 p.m. tomorrow.
4 p.m. tomorrow. I'm going to show you the Patreon only HockeyBuzzcast shirt, which has come in, the T-shirt.
Oh, great!
32 tomorrow. It's going to literally look great. And so all of our Patreon followers who we have neglected to a degree while we've gotten everything together here, we don't want you to feel neglected anymore. So we'll be going, that's patreon.com/hockey, getting you guys everybody shirts and stuff like that. We're going to be talking to all of you about individually, and we'll make the shirt available as well, but it's going to be down the line. For now, it's only a Patreon thing, for the HockeyBuzzcast T-shirts. But I think they really look cool. We had someone.
I love it.
All right, guys. So we'll show you that tomorrow. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Talk to you soon.